I noticed my neighbor watching my house through his binoculars every night. When I confronted him, he handed me a detailed map of my own property. For the last 3 weeks, a strange chill had settled over my evenings. Every time I went into the kitchen to make tea after sunset, I could feel eyes on me. Our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, a quiet man who had lived in the house next door for 40 years, was always standing by his upstairs window. He didn't even try to hide it. He would stand there with a pair of heavy black binoculars, staring directly toward my backyard. My husband told me I was being paranoid. He said Mr. Henderson was just an old man with nothing better to do, probably bird watching or looking at the stars. But birds don't fly in the dark, and the binoculars were always pointed down, toward the edge of our garden where the old oak trees meet the fence. I started closing all the curtains, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It felt heavy, like a warning I couldn't quite hear. Yesterday, I finally reached my breaking point. I saw him again, his silhouette framed by his window, those binoculars fixed on my patio. I didn't call the police. I wanted to look him in the eye and ask him what he was looking for. I marched across the lawn and pounded on his front door. When he opened it, he didn't look like a creep or a villain. He looked terrified. His hands were shaking, and his face was as pale as a ghost. Before I could even start yelling, he whispered, "I was hoping you wouldn't notice," but I couldn't look away. He stepped back and invited me into his hallway, which was covered in old blueprints and historical records of our neighborhood. He reached onto a side table and handed me a hand-drawn map of my own backyard. It was incredibly detailed, but there were strange markings I didn't recognize. Red circles drawn over the exact spots where my children usually play. My heart hammered in my chest. I thought I had walked into a nightmare, but then he started explaining. Mr. Henderson used to be a civil engineer. He had been monitoring the ground levels of our street for months. He showed me the map again, pointing to the red circles. They weren't targets, they were sinkholes. An old, forgotten underground drainage system from the 1920s was collapsing right underneath our lawn. He hadn't been watching me. He had been watching the ground. He was using the binoculars to track the minute shifts in the soil and the way the trees were leaning. He told me he was too afraid to tell us because he didn't want to cause a panic until he was 100% sure, but he couldn't stop watching in case the ground gave way while my kids were outside. He had been standing guard at his window every single night, ready to scream a warning if he saw the earth start to open up. I looked at the map and then back at my house. What I thought was a threat was actually a silent, exhausting vigil. Mr. Henderson wasn't a stalker. He was a guardian who was carrying a terrifying secret all by himself to keep us safe. We called the city inspectors that same night, and they confirmed that the entire back section of our yard was structurally hollow. If it hadn't been for the man with the binoculars, I don't want to think about what could have happened. I learned that sometimes the things that look the scariest are actually the things trying to save us. We don't close our curtains anymore. In fact, we invited Mr. Henderson over for dinner, and now he watches the backyard from our porch instead of his window.